The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Nebraska baseball has their home opener, South Alabama, coming up Friday. As we welcome in one of the voices of Husker baseball, our dear friend and former co-host of Hail Varsity, David Gustafson, up there in Columbus, News Talk 900. Gus, how we doing, man? Thanks for a few minutes. Good to talk with you again.
Yeah, good to be back with you. We're doing well, and the Huskers are playing well, so that's a good thing. A big weekend, a series win, and I know there's a lot of excitement as they get their home opener here, and should be able to get it in weather-wise, which is kind of unusual this time of year in Nebraska, but it looks pretty good for the weekend. Well,
you dealt with some weather. I saw pictures, not those kind of pictures, Gus, but the Gus World Tour of some of the sights and sounds of Charleston. Give me your vacation rating while you worked and played a little bit before we get into some baseball.
Well, it's tough because it's supposed to be sunny and 75 there, right? Like year-round, supposedly. But no, it was good. I'd certainly give it a 7.5, let's put it that way, even though we had some rain and some cloud cover and fog on the beach, that sort of thing. But it's a great place to be. The ballpark itself is a great setting where it was located down next to the water. And just the history of Charleston was kind of fun to check out as well. I'm a little history buff, so it was even more interesting for me. And, and we were with some friends there, and they're big movie buffs. And, there's so many different shows, movies that were filmed in that area. It was kind of fun to check out all the sights and sounds.
How was the food down in Charleston?
Say, how are the oysters, dude?
I don't eat those. Did have.
I saw them posted.
The person sitting across the table was eating them. I think they're not very good. I don't like them, but they love them. And so they were eating them. They, I guess if you're an oyster fan, they were pretty good. They had fresh caught oysters there from South Carolina, which apparently they eat different kind of algae, so they're more of like almost a teal green oysters. So it's kind of interesting to see those type of oysters. But they said they were great, so I'm going to take their word for it. So I did not try one.
They're green, meaning they look even less appealing than they usually do?
Correct. Yes, exactly.
Gus, what did you glean from Nebraska? We were talking a lot of this week so far about Husker baseball, and that 7-3 start is as good as it's been since 2008. Good for Will Bolton Company. Flipping it around, I mean, you were busy in the ninth. You and Ben had 3 comebacks to call, and it had to be pretty cool. You were around the team. You were around Coach Bolt. What did you take away here after this weekend of response?
Well, the biggest thing I took away is there's no panic. They're all cool, calm, and collective. And really, if you look at the roster, there's a lot of underclassmen, a lot of guys who haven't had a huge amount of success at the college level, haven't even had a lot of activity at the college level. So there's a lot of resilience in this team. That's the biggest thing I took away. Is they never panicked. They never were giving up when they had down, by 4 runs going into the 9th inning there Thursday night. It looked pretty clean, but, there was an error at the start of the inning, and then the next guy reaches, and the merry-go-round continued, and all of a sudden they put on 4 runs just like that. And, the thing for what I took away the most is they just don't give up. And they believe that they're going to win, doesn't matter what inning it is. And the confidence level was there the whole time. And, there's some guys that have that bullpen that are really young, but, man, they have a lot of confidence. And I think that's the biggest thing is the coaching staff has confidence in this group as well, that they have the ability to trust these young guys to go out there and do their job. Now, that job may be to go get 1 or 2 guys, but they understand that. The guys in the bullpen understand that. Or if you're a pinch hitter, for instance, go out there, do your job, try to get on base, move the runner, that sort of thing. So I think there's a lot of trust between the coaching staff and the players, and that's evident when you pull off 3 rallies because you never quit.
One of the things that this past weekend and 2 weekends ago really reminded me of was that 2021 mantra of gritty beats pretty. That was kind of the rallying cry for that team all year long. And we know what happened. That team ends up taking Arkansas to the final game in the regional, really gives them all they can handle. That was a team that really exemplified that mantra. Have you seen enough from this team this year to make that comparison back to 2021 of a team that plays in a way that gritty beats pretty?
Well, I don't know if there's enough under their belt yet to make that comparison to that team, but this team certainly has the capability of doing that. They have the makeup to do it. They have the players to do it, and I think there's a confidence level right now that's riding so high with those guys. They're very loose. They like each other. They're fighting for each other, and it doesn't matter at the end of the day how you win, because if you are able to play together and pull out the win, that's the key, right? And so it doesn't matter if it's a one-run game or a 6-run win. If you can find a way to pull out the victory, that's what you're there for. And it doesn't matter if it's pretty, right? Go get the W. And that's what they did all weekend long.
You talk about finding a way to pull off a win, and this is something that Schmidt and myself discussed on the newest episode of the Average Joe Sports Show. What is the strength of this team? Whenever it comes down to it, Big Ten play starts up, how is this team going to beat people? Because it does feel pretty balanced right now, and it's been hard for me to put my finger on what the strength of this team is. What do you think the strength of this team is?
Well, I think the strength, to be honest with you, there's a couple different ones. One is the strength of the starting pitching, right? They've been pretty solid, and I think you're going to see that continue throughout the rest of the season. The bullpen's very strong as well. They have situational guys. On the offensive side, it may not show up all the time, but they've been pretty good so far here the first 10 games in of finding those timely hits when they need one. You're looking at that Thursday night game, and Riley Silva comes up, and the Huskers needed a 2-out base hit, right? Needed a 2-run single. Well, he delivers that. So it's the timely hitting. Now, some of the situational hitting might not be exactly where the coaching staff wants them to be, but the timing hitting has been there, and that's been key for them. So those are a couple of strengths, and I don't know if those will go away. We hope they don't for sure, but I think that first one, the starting pitching, is going to be consistent throughout the season.
Let's talk a little bit here about Karen, about Silva, about Brumbaugh, a guy that I followed a little bit in high school, Will Jeske from Lincoln Southeast, had some big moments, and he's just a freshman. But, we talk about the talent of this team. Gus, you followed Nebraska baseball a long time, and you've done your games over the years. What's your take here on the uptick you've seen with pitching and the Rob Childress effect?
Well, Rob Childress he is a terrific pitching coach. We've known that for decades, right? And he brings just a confidence level to himself, which he's now trained onto the kids that he's coaching, and they're taking it to the fullest extent that they can, because they have tremendous amount of confidence in what he's telling them to do, what he's explaining to them to do, and vice versa. He has confidence in those guys. He's not afraid to go get some of these young guys out of the bullpen and throw them into extremely tough positions, because he's done that. He's taken true freshmen, throwing them out there on the hill in the 10th inning when there's all kinds of traffic going on the bases. He doesn't care, because he has confidence in those guys, which then they have confidence in, okay, if Coach believes in me, I believe in myself even more, we're going to go get him. So, Rob Childress is a terrific addition to this staff. His pitching knowledge, he's a few pitches ahead of what he wants to do on every hitter. And that's the thing that you got to love about Rob Childress, is he's so confident in what he's doing, and he's so confident in what his kids can do, that his players just play hard for him and go out there with the utmost confidence that they can get the job done, knowing because if Coach Childress wants to put you in, you're there for a reason.
David Gustafson, part of the Husker Network and part of the voices of Nebraska baseball this year, with Greg Sharp and Ben McLaughlin. Back from Charleston, he says no to oysters, but yes to no quit Nebraska baseball. A few more minutes with Gus in this abbreviated hour one of Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
David Gustafson's with us, one of the voices for Husker baseball this season. As you heard him in Charleston, and Gus is the good luck charm with that 3-game sweep. He says no to oysters and yes to 2-out hits, as he is with us here at Hail Varsity. You remember Gus from Early days of Hail Varsity Radio in Columbus, News Talk 900. It's going to be awesome to hear Gus all season long, different parts of the season with Husker Baseball.
Yeah, and Childress obviously stole the headlines this offseason, being the guy coming back to Nebraska. He was already in that role as the director of player development, but comes back in full-time pitching coach. But Nebraska also added Sirianni over the offseason as another assistant coach. Have you seen any impact from what Sirianni has brought to the program this year?
Yeah, more confidence. I mean, he's great with the hitters, throwing BP. He's going through some of the different things. Him and Herbel out there on the base pass, they worked great together. They have a little different idea of how they want to attack the bases. And I think we'll see that going on a little bit more as the season, especially with guys like Riley Silva, right? He's an extremely good base runner. You have other smart base runners, good base runners, and I think you'll see them be a little bit more aggressive. But Sirianni's helped out a tremendous amount as well. Again, just confidence. Give the kids confidence. And the players are responding so well to these new guys that they've brought in. And, of course, to head coach Will Bolt, right? Will Bolt has confidence in all of these guys, and you can see that. And they're playing a lot like, well, Schmidt, you remember these days when Will Bolt was playing here, right? Mm-hmm. He played hard, and that's what these guys are doing day in and day out.
Last thought here, Gus, on Nebraska and the bullpen. We touched on the Childress effect, which is great. You've got Timmerman coming in from Beatrice that's been put on a pretty big stage, and even Dice, and then Kyle Perry. I mean, you have options in the bullpen. Has anyone really surprised you, or do you like the look, the stuff of some of the pitchers you saw come out to put those fires out?
Well, the moxie's great, right? They're all, Dice, he's kind of got a little issue with his arm. They're trying to rest him, so they only threw him one night here this past weekend. But he'll see some more action going forward. KP's he's always been good. Mm-hmm. Timmerman's really been impressive, right? Is the true freshman. They've thrown him out there more than they've thrown any other reliever out there, and he doesn't back down from any challenge. He's got great stuff. The other guy who was pretty good this weekend was McConaughey as well. He came out through 2+ innings, and he was very solid. So there's a lot of good pieces in this bullpen that can make it a great bullpen here by the end of the year.
Did you do the all right when he came out of the bullpen?
No, I did not.
I just asked.
No, I didn't.
I have offended Gus on that. Okay, Gus, last thought, and we'll get you out. David Gustafson, he's one of the voices for Husker Baseball. You heard him in Charleston. When are you up next, man? When can we hear you again?
Well, I don't have the South Alabama, which will be a good team, by the way. They'll come to Haymarket here this weekend. That's a solid team in South Alabama. They're 10-2 on the season. I think they have New Orleans maybe tonight, so they'll have another game under their belt before they get here. I'll be in Wichita. So I'll be next Tuesday and Wednesday down in Wichita X Stadium there for the Huskers and Shockers.
Any oysters in Wichita?
No. You run from seafood, I do believe, in Wichita.
I would agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gus,
It's a great stadium, great venue, though, down there to watch college baseball. So any Husker fans want to make their trip down to Wichita, that'll be a fun environment for sure, that Tuesday to Wednesday.
That's David Gustafson. You hear him with Husker Baseball. Gus, we'll talk soon. Thanks so much for the time.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, guys.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We'll get to our starting five here for Hour 2 and make those announcements. State Basketball Day 1, Omaha Central by 10 over Omaha North. Gretna gets rocking tonight against Millard North at 6. We'll have Westside and Lincoln Southeast locally here. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for spending time. We'll check in with Evan Bland here in a moment. Big thanks to David Gustafson, part of the Husker Radio Network and their coverage on Nebraska baseball. Good insight from Gus. And I don't blame him on the the oysters take. I was all excited to try oysters. I had them literally 15 feet from where they were caught in Ireland, and I just couldn't do them. I can't do them. I tried them and didn't like them. So Gus and I are on the same page, David Gustafson, when it comes to oysters. There we go. There's our food take for the day. Evan Bland shortly, and then we'll run down Dr. Brandon Seifert, a Jock Doc Wednesday. Interesting comments from Nick Saban on why he got out. And it sounds a heck of a lot like our friend Lars Anderson told us, the day after Saban's abrupt retirement. We'll get into some Nebraska football thoughts as well. Let's get you the starting five and give you your shout-outs of folks in the stream. Jeff is checked in. Jeff, thanks for listening. Tim Wolf is in. Steven is in. Mr. Nichols, good to have you. Andrew White checks in at 4. And Brennan from the Black Hills is in at 5. The artist formerly known as KG Kids for number 6. Tuck says, what's up? Brian calls us slackers. He isn't wrong. In at 7. Moonbot, howdy nerds. His customary greeting. Eat beef. Dion checks in as well. Andrew Anderson. Andrew, good to have you. And the other Dave. Too many false starts. Totally get it. James Norton says hello. Thanks for checking in. And we'll get to more of your comments. The other Elijah is also saying hello. So tell a friend, like the content, feedback on the content, and always find us Hail Varsity YouTube channel, like, subscribe. Also follow on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Evan Bland joins us from the Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH. Evan, good to spend a few minutes with you. Thanks for making time. How are you doing?
You got it. Yeah, doing great. Lincoln's exciting this time of year with state tournament and looking both ways on one-way streets and all that good stuff. But it's a fun time.
So
that's the best way I've ever heard it put.
Well, and he isn't wrong. Driving to the station, and maybe this is just somebody who's visiting, and maybe it's state tournament related, but all 33 County was in front of me. And there's a turn into the station here up on Cornhusker Highway, glorious Cornhusker. And they, without looking, without missing a beat, were in the left turn lane into the station entrance. It's kind of going in backwards. It's like backing your car into the bat cave, so to speak, with a little front driveway that gets into the main parking lot. Without missing a beat, 33 County just said, I don't want to turn here, back onto the highway. Just Dukes a hazard, strong right turn, and who knows if there's, an 18-wheeler, which is possible and probable on Cornhusker highways following along.
Well, do you know which of our good friends is
33
originally
County?
From 33 County?
No.
Well, it's Jefferson County, which county's seat is Fairbury.
Oh, no.
That's the pride of Bill Dolman. That's Bill Dolman's people.
I would add too, I generally have trust issues with roundabouts, but that amps up to the nth degree this week just because people aren't maybe familiar with it. So this is that time of year that really carries over for many months for me.
And I generally have trust issues.
I hope the folks coming in learn to appreciate the roundabouts, because once you get the roundabout down, 10 times better than an intersection with lights.
It is true.
It's so much better.
It just takes too long to build the roundabouts.
You build it, and then it's like a 6-month period of everybody within the area learning how to use it. But then once everybody gets it down, man, does it just fly. Traffic flow.
There's not a ton of roundabouts that I know of, now that I'm super well versed in Omaha. But Omaha just flies, man. It's and I know traffic's a little bit of a mother in Omaha. It can be. But just when I got to roll up there, man, I never have traffic problems. We get to the Hail Varsity, or the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Find me, burn me, forgive me. Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill Club. Never have any traffic issues. I don't know if roundabouts are prominent in Omaha or not. I don't know how prominent they are in Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island, or Columbus.
They're non-existent.
Right. All the baseball trips up there over the years. It's been fine, but Evan Bland with the line of the day. I am fearful for the roundabouts. That's so good.
See, Evan said look both ways in the one-ways. I'm going to start looking both ways in the roundabouts, too. You just get up there and you look left. I'm going to be safe this weekend.
Even those of us that have experienced the roundabout are dicey from time to time if we're in a hurry.
And let it be known, this is not Hail Varsity Radio trashing the people coming
Thank you
in
for
from out
coming.
of state.
Thank you for spending money.
Thank you for spending money. We're sure you'll get the traffic patterns down soon. This is more a warning to the drivers in the city of Lincoln. Be patient during this time.
Be kind.
Look both ways on the one-ways. You never know what you might see.
Be Nebraska nice. And Evan, how nice has Husker baseball been? I know Will Bolt held a presser a few hours ago outside the gray skies behind him, but what a start. And we just talked to David Gustafson, who was part of the play-by-play team that was in Charleston. Really impressive. A lot of guts, a lot of confidence, Evan, shown by Nebraska baseball, and they can't rest. South Alabama's pretty stiff coming in. They're pretty talented.
Yeah, they're 10-2, and it kind of continues the theme that Nebraska's had, where they went down to Grand Canyon and they were undefeated. They went to College of Charleston, they were undefeated. Now you got a pretty good Jaguars team coming in as well. Maybe they're not so used to, the real field that's going to be in the upper 30s that it'll be on Friday night, but it's a solid team with a pretty good rotation. That seems to be what's carried South Alabama to this point. But, yeah, the guys were feeling good today, man, and why not? Coming off of a weekend sweep where you rally in the ninth 3 times, and the pitching's coming together, and when you win, even the things that Nebraska's maybe statistically a little bit deficient in, like their perspective is, hey, we haven't even played up to our abilities yet, so there's even room for further improvement. And really that's defensively, they probably would like to be a little bit better and have a few more clutch hits offensively, but it's a group that's feeling good. There's no doubt. You look at the RPI, which is still way early, given, but if you're in the top 10 in that metric now, that beats the heck out of where they've been in moments like this over the years, where they're in the 70s or the 80s, and it's hard to make up that ground later. So, it's a team that's starting to figure itself out a little bit. They're battling some injuries. They're still tinkering with their weekend rotation, but by and large, they're finding ways. And if you can have that kind of a foundation, they feel pretty confident that it's only going to be better moving forward.
Evan, when you think about early March baseball in Lincoln, Nebraska, is that advantage Nebraska, or is that just kind of disadvantage everybody?
Well, it can be disadvantage if you're in the crowd and you don't have a hot chocolate. So that's certainly possible. But, I get the sense that Nebraska has embraced it over the years. A lot of these guys are local kids or Midwest kids that grew up doing this. They did the travel circuit, and this is not new to them. The wind isn't new to them. Playing in suboptimal conditions isn't new to them. Cole Evans today had a good line as a Grand Island kid, talking about playing in the 70-degree weather in South Carolina last weekend. He said, I prefer the cold over the humidity. So I do better in a place like this. So I think the guys tend to embrace that. I think they do view it as an advantage this weekend, playing some guys from the South who maybe just aren't used to the colder temperatures and the wind and maybe a little bit of precipitation and whatever else it might be. So I think they embrace that. I think they're happy to be home. You take a look at the Haymarket Park right now. The grass is green. It honestly looks about as good as it has, or you could expect it to look this time of year. And I think they're ready to just carry over what they've done on the road into a solid performance at home.
And one thing to note this weekend, Evan, it is South Alabama's first trip away from home. They have played every game so far this season at what might be my favorite named ballpark in America. I've just found this recently. South Alabama plays at Stanky Field, which you could make a joke about the state of Alabama with Stanky Field. I won't. I'll let you fill in the blanks. But I love that name, Stanky Field. I feel like that's got to be a great home field advantage once you get used to the stank.
Put some stank on it.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, if you got the speed, they've got the stanky legs, whatever you want to go with. You can embrace that thing.
So many good puns you could throw in there with South Alabama.
Evan, a thought on Brumbaugh and his injury situation. And let's talk a little bit here about Will Jeske getting a look at second base here moving forward for Nebraska.
Yeah, not super ideal. Obviously, Brumbaugh's been their leadoff guy, and they've really liked what he's done at second. He had kind of a lingering arm thing that cropped up over the last weekend or so, and Will said today it's a situation where he's going to have to rest for 3 weeks, rehab for 3 weeks, and then maybe he'll be ready to go. At that point, he'll be able to continue to hit, which is a plus for the offense, but it does mean that he would have to be taking up that designated hitter spot. I know they like to spread that around and maybe use it on a guy like Josh Caron on a day he's not catching, or give Case Sanderson, a freshman, a chance to hit when maybe there's not a spot in the field for him. So I think you'll see a little bit of Brumbaugh still hitting, maybe quite a bit. But you'll also see, as you mentioned, Will Jeske and maybe a few other guys, Bryce Hughes or Rhett Stokes or others getting some looks at second. Jeske's been interesting. Nebraska, they viewed him as a catcher coming into the year. He played third base mostly in high school, but they're willing to play him a little bit out of position. They feel like he can do well enough there with the glove because of how the bat is played. They said, he got stronger as the fall went on. They track things like barrels, how often you're able to barrel up a pitch, and Jeske's right up there with some of the better hitters on the team. So he's going to get a chance to show what he can do with the bat. And these are the kind of those situations where if you start strong and you're clutch early, like you can take that job and run with it for a while. And if not, if it goes another way, they feel like they have enough depth at that spot with some of the guys I mentioned that they can also kind of get by and maybe not miss a beat, similar to what they've done with Josh Overbeek at third so far.
Evan Bland with us here from the Omaha World Herald, Hail Varsity Radio, as we talk some Husker baseball, South Alabama coming to town. And Evan, before we get you out of here, I do want to turn our attention briefly to Husker basketball with us about the last 30, or so I should say last
Unless
3
he's
minutes.
got 2 minutes on the other side for some overtime. Evan, is dinner on the table, or you got to run, or you got a couple minutes on the other side since we got to you late?
I can hang, yeah.
All
sure.
right.
You want to stick with Husker baseball, Schmidt?
Yeah, just real quick, we know that Nebraska likes what Christo's bringing, same with Sears. About a minute and a half here, Evan, on the wrap with Husker baseball. Ty Horn is somebody that is a freshman that's going to get his start. He's had some high-pressure moments, and he's prevailed, and now Sunday looks like it's his day.
Yeah, really interesting decision for them to go with Horn on Sunday. He, like you said, looked good in relief. For people that don't remember, he was a late commit last June because of some coaching movement at Wichita State. He had major recruiting interest from pretty much every top program in the area. And you look at what he did as a senior out of Halstead, Kansas. He gave up no earned runs in 38 innings. He's hitting mid-90s with his fastball. He's got 4 or 5 different pitches he can throw for strikes. So this was somebody that Nebraska identified certainly over the long term that could be a weekend starter, and now they're giving him a chance, right out of the chute here on Sunday. So really high ceiling, projects really well. Again, somebody who, if it doesn't stick for him now, I think it will eventually, but he's somebody who could step right in and not give up that role depending on how things go. So definitely someone to watch on Sunday.
I have in 60 seconds here as we wrap on baseball. We'll get to basketball after the break. A question that's been ruminating in my own head. I asked Gustafson this question last hour. What's the strength of this Husker baseball team right now?
I think it's pitching depth, quite honestly. They don't necessarily have, and maybe they do, but it doesn't look like to this point they have overly dominant starters the way that they have in the past. But if your starters can give you 5 innings, like they have an army of arms out of the bullpen, guys who closed games elsewhere, and it seems like every game they've had 4 or 5 guys come in and toss scoreless appearances and find a way to get it done, all the way from the 6th-year veteran like Kyle Perry all the way down to freshmen like Tucker Timmerman. And so I think that's kind of where it's been. The defense and the offense have been working to catch up to that standard that's set, but I think there's no doubt that Nebraska's 7-3 in large part because of just the number of options they've had on the mound.
Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland OWH. Evan, hang tight. We'll hit some hoops and a football thought before we say goodbye. Thanks for hanging through, okay?
You got it.
All right. We'll take a quick time out. More of your comments in the stream. Give us a follow, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, as we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Our friends in the stream's on a bit of a heater today between Dion talking about his kids' chili, Brian thinking that I'm a Ron Jeremy fan, and then this discussion about well-done beef. And Brian's a beef producer, and he's not a fan of it. KG Kids for Life.
Not only is he not a fan of well-done meat, he says, I am offended by any meal that doesn't involve something that had parents.
Okay. There we have it. Veggie chili is, you know what? I've not tried veggie chili, KG Kids for Life. I'm sure it's wonderful. But a well-done steak is a way to eat steak. I disagree. And Evan Bland is back with us. Evan, how do you do your New York strip or ribeye?
I'm a medium guy. You know, I think back to the line from King of the Hill where Hank Hill's son Bobby asks, you know, what if somebody wants their meat well done? And Hank says, we ask them politely but firmly to leave. So that's always kind of stuck with me. So I'm a medium kind of guy.
Okay. Medium rare?
Rare to medium rare,
yeah,
depending on how I'm feeling. Sometimes a good rare steak. It's a good rare steak.
I don't disagree. I err on the side of medium rare. That's how we've settled it on this side. And just enjoy your Nebraska steaks, right? 100%. Let's just say it that way. Evan, hoops is where we're going next, and Michigan is gettable. Nebraska has a chance at that double bye. How you feeling heading into the weekend?
You know, I feel pretty good for what they have. I mean, they do have something to play for. Like you mentioned, the double bye. Bracketology has become a daily sort of chore, and right now they're, a 9 seed or a 10 seed, depending on who you ask or where you look. And I don't know, man. I kept thinking back to the Rutgers game earlier this week, and you know, when Rutgers got back within 6 late in the game, years of muscle memory would say, look out, right? Like, this is when the drought comes, this is when the collapse comes. I never felt like they were going to give that thing away. Like, and that's a new feeling, I think, for Nebraska basketball. Like, even when there's a little bit of adversity, even when the opponent rises up a little bit, you're just like, I think they're going to be okay. And, like, I just kind of have that feeling for Michigan this weekend. I mean, that's a program over there that's probably got some major changes ahead of it. Its off season's going to come a lot sooner and look a lot different than what Nebraska's likely will. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a team in Nebraska that just has kind of figured out its identity. It knows the blueprint. It knows that if it plays hard, that the defense will be there, and that the shooting from a 3-point perspective it tends to be right there as well. So they still have seeding and things to play for. I personally think no matter what happens, they're in the tournament at this point. That's my opinion. But I think they're going as a team that's confident, knows what it takes to win, and I'd be surprised if there was any other outcome out there.
Evan, what concerns me with Sunday, I want to get your take on this, is that for the first time in a while, it feels like there's a lot more to lose than to gain against Michigan on Sunday. I think if you lose, you can still play your way into the NCAA tournament field. I think you're still in it, assuming you can get a win in the Big Ten tournament. But you look at the potential seeding in the Big Ten tournament, the reinvigoration of the bubble talk for Nebraska should they lose to Michigan. It just feels like there's more to lose than there is to gain in your final game against Michigan on Sunday. Do you think I'm on the money with that, or am I off?
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska should be favored, and if they take care of business, I mean, it's kind of like Rutgers. Like, if they had lost that game at home to Rutgers, it would be a much different conversation. But you're talking about a road game still in the Big Ten. I'm probably with you. I mean, if they take care of business, then, like we said, the double bye is back in play. But it maybe doesn't affect their NCAA tournament seeding or outlook all that much. If they lose it, then people might start talking about the team from a few years ago that reached that 20-win plateau and still didn't get a home game in the NIT. Like, maybe that conversation will come up a little bit more moving forward. But, again, like, that would just surprise me. Like, these are two teams, kind of like two ships passing in the night, going different directions. I think one's ready to wrap things up and move on to what's next. And for Nebraska, it just feels like this is kind of the start of what they have going on. So from a focus perspective, from a talent perspective, from just a momentum perspective, I think Nebraska's in good shape here, despite what their road record in the Big Ten is. But yeah, I do think certainly a loss changes the conversation more than a win does.
Evan, football, before we say goodbye, a lot's been discussed and shown about the polar bear with his commitment, his reshaping with wrestling, and you look at just the condition he is in, and the guy's logged just a boatload of snaps, specifically last year. We were talking with Matt Verzel yesterday, and Verz is like, dude, that's heavy work. And he's right. The amount of snaps that the polar bear played with Nash doing his thing. What is optimum for him, do you believe, from a weight? What does he get back up to? Even if he's down 20, 25 pounds, say he's at 305 or 310, he still has that quickness and agility from getting back to wrestling, and that'll translate in the trenches for sure. But what do you foresee next season for him?
Well, I mean, what did he lose? 40 pounds, I think it was, to get down to that 280 range.
Yeah, 330 yeah.
So, yeah, you would think back to at least by spring ball, you'd be putting on at least 20 of that back, and then you'd probably be back to where you want to be by the fall. But, I mean, he's obviously was an accomplished high school wrestler, still had a passion for doing that, and it's no coincidence that Nebraska featured his story prominently on their Chasing 3 documentary, just from a sense of what he was doing and how that interacted with what nutrition could help with and strength training could help with him, and the fact that the coaches were all for it and supported his decision to do that. I mean, all that is very much a recruiting tool, I think, for future athletes that come in, whether that's in track and field or baseball, football sort of athlete or whatever it might be. Just the support that those athletes have is a great place to start. And, I mean, you look at what Nash, his potential is moving forward when you pair him with Ty Robinson and all the other veterans back along that defensive line, like it's setting up really well. And Nebraska's emphasis, especially along the line of agility and explosion, I think does play into his strengths, and we saw that in flashes last year. You think about last fall, he was sort of a little bit of an unknown. I mean, he had played sort of a rotational role, and that was his first time as a full-time regular contributor, and now he's coming in this next year as someone who's established and who probably has another level left in him. And so if there was any question about the drive that he has to be great, I think that was answered during what he's done as a wrestler, and it does seem like maybe there's another step for him and even better production than what we've seen.
Evan, how quickly, as we talk about Nash and his weight, his body transformation here, how quickly do you think you could gain 20 pounds? If it really came down
Give me a weekend.
Yeah, good weight or bad weight? Good weight, bad weight, not long at all. Good weight, maybe a little bit more time. He'll have to go back from eating 3 meals a day to like 5. So I don't know. To me, that doesn't sound too bad, but maybe that's a sacrifice on his end.
Yeah, he's had to, what did he say? He had to cut down his egg skate every morning from 8 to 4 or something stupid like that. What?
Give me 4 over easy, please. Yeah,
right.
That was good.
Like, try putting just 4 scrambled eggs in a burrito, eat it, and try to
do anything.
Do anything. Yeah, 8 eggs in a morning is just ridiculous.
That's incredible. It
seems like a problem that we'd all like to have. Like, eat more, find a way to cram in more. Okay, I suppose we should all be so lucky to have such problems.
Evan, you take care. We'll check in with you next week. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
All right, good to do a little overtime with Evan Bland. Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter is where you find him, and good stuff with the World Herald, his podcast, Pick Six podcast with him and Sammy and Tom Chattel. Tom's going to join us tomorrow. Excited to talk with him, so that's cool. Yeah, the amount of scrambled eggs. What's the most you've done? Have you done 4? Have you done 5? Have you done the 5-egg omelet before?
I've done
You're hungover as hell, and it's time to just crush eggs.
Back
do the old country breakfast.
Freshman year of college, I used to handle breakfast and lunch in one sitting.
Sure.
With the 4 to 5 egg burrito, where you just scramble them up, scramble the eggs, throw them in an eggshell with a little cheese and some hot sauce. That's probably the most I've ever done in one sitting. I've done in terms of fillingness, I've done a steak with a couple of eggs. That might be one of the most filling meals you can get that doesn't involve any carbs. And I think I've gotten up to a steak with 3 eggs on that one and did not feel good afterwards.
Brian says keep the veggie chili away from Nash and he can get the weight on. Veggie chili, you got to try it. I guess I got to try it.
And the thing is,
anything's better than my wife's chili, just to be flat out honest.
That's mean.
It's true.
I have good chili.
No, you and Cranack both are world champions at chili. I get more beans and less flavor and minimal meat in the Schmidt chili that she makes.
Well, as we were talking steaks, I was thinking with that, awesome. I know the university has that partnership with Piedmontese. Get him some steaks, but the problem being, if you cook him the way the artist formerly known as KG Kids for Life suggested, he'll burn way too many calories chewing if he's eating them all well done. So we may have to ask Nash that. How does he like his steaks cooked?
Well, we'll do that. We'll try and get a sit down with the polar bear here this spring or for sure in the fall. And thing you got to do is, when we're talking red meat and steaks, the ranking goes like this for me, right? If we're going to go preseason rankings or all-time rankings, it's filet, New York strip, T-bone.
Whoa, that's a horrible list.
No, it is not. It's incredible.
Ribeye, number 1. The fact that you left ribeye off your list.
I like ribeye. I'm not going to say no to a ribeye. Most of the ribeyes I get, though, are a little too much fat on them.
I can understand ribeye.
I've changed my eating habits. You know this.
I can understand ribeye not being number 1. To not include it in the top 3 is a disservice to steaks. For me, it's ribeye 1. Give me that porterhouse 2.
Well, that's T-bone.
T-bone, but the porterhouse is an important element. Give me that bigger section of filet. And then I'll probably take strip and filet are kind of tied at 3. I think I'll give the edge to a filet, but the beefy flavor on the strip is hard to beat.
Oh, well, we can agree to disagree. Tuck says the ribeye is number 1. A Jock Doc on the way. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us from Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon, it's not too far off. Once we get through some hoops madness, it's baseball time. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Chris. And it is crazy to think that baseball is around the corner. I can't even believe they're already playing spring training. But, yep, it's on its way. I'm getting excited. I don't know about you, but it should be a pretty awesome year.
Well, we'll see how the Red Sox respond. One of their key free agent signings, 29-year-old Lucas Giolito. He is, questioning whether he'll be able to go. It's supposed to be the guy for Boston, one of their options, and he is seeking a second opinion right now, fearful of that UCL and flexor strain he's dealing with, and seeking a second opinion with Dr. Jeffrey Dugas down in Birmingham, Alabama, to see what can be done so he doesn't miss any time, let alone the start, but doesn't sound like things are good.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Dr. Dugas, Jeffrey Dugas, that's somebody that I trained in my fellowship with. He was with Dr. Andrews. He's kind of a big guy, and basically, let's take care of partial Tommy John injuries or UCL, ulnar collateral ligaments. I guess before I get too far down the road here, as we review this, we've talked about Tommy John injuries a lot on the show, just because they're becoming, quite common. But essentially what it is anatomically, if you feel along that inside part of your elbow, elbow, kind of near your funny bone. That side of the elbow is supported with the structure called the ulnar collateral ligament, or Tommy John ligament, is what it's more popularized as. And essentially what that does is that resists that elbow motion where if you were to put your arm all the way out straight, and if you were to kind of take and bring your thumb to the outside of the body, that puts a stress on the inside of the elbow. So that's essentially what that acts to resist. And so as you imagine in a throwing athlete up overhead, and you see some of the arm position that the elbow and shoulder itself go into, that's essentially what that is supporting. And so in this scenario, that's the injury that he's dealing with. But there's a gentleman, named Dr. Dugas down in Birmingham, Alabama, that does a lot of work with partial UCL injuries. And kind of his specialty would be doing a thing called an internal brace, which is essentially where you take a partial tear and you can add this, it's basically a suture, a really thick suture construct to the kind of stretched or partially torn Tommy John ligament to add extra support. You kind of incorporate that into the ligament itself, and that can allow somebody to go back and play. And there's some pretty good data on that. The issues you just have to be careful with is I think the indications are a bit tight on that. Sometimes they get stretched a little, but you really want to make sure that there's still fairly well-preserved integrity of that ligamentous structure. And so that's likely why he's going down there to have that discussion. Is he's in those talks of, okay, it sounds like he's got a partial injury to this Tommy John. Does he just rest for a while, try some biologics, which can be like stem cells, PRP, all those kinds of things to try to promote healing, or do you go more on the surgery route for potentially maybe better long-term outcomes, although the data is a bit mixed on that at this point.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, a Jock Doc Wednesday, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. And we're talking about right-hander for the Red Sox, Lucas Giolito. And initial imaging showed damage to that right elbow. He's seeking a second opinion. And you laid out some of the alternative options possibly. But when you kind of painted that picture of putting your arm out and then putting your thumb outside, at 29 years of age, when I look at Giolito, I mean, is this just a use/situation where he, with all the breaking pitches, is that the buildup? Is that the accumulation here with this imaging and this damage?
Yeah, I would definitely say probably a combo of the two, Chris. When you think about the long career he's had, pretty high velocity guy, and he's had a fairly successful career. But likely this is probably a lot of that kind of what we call micro trauma that's kind of build up over time. That would be definitely a part of this. The other part of this would be, maybe he's had an acute issue here that maybe showed up in spring training where he had kind of that one event where he threw and felt kind of a tweak or a little pop to the area. And that's another, obviously, scenario. Again, it's probably a combo of the two. What's interesting about this is we're talking about this very topic. I was at a recent conference here recently, and it talked about, I feel like over the last several years there's been kind of an increase in the amount of Tommy John injuries we've been talking about, or at least seeing professionals experience. But really over the last 2 years, there's been kind of a remarkable increase in the number of these Tommy John injuries. In one of the talks I was at, it was actually the team physician for the Dodgers we were talking, and he was just telling me how they looked into this because they couldn't figure out why all these kind of increased numbers of Tommy John injuries were showing up in their office. And essentially when they went back and looked at this, the only factor that kind of changed in the last 2 years was kind of this big outright ban of any type of tacky substances for throwing for your pitchers, especially the major leagues. And so as he went through and looked through this kind of information, started talking to Clayton Kershaw about it, essentially, pitchers at that level rely upon tons and tons of spin on their ball to do what they need to do. And so what they've had to do now is they've had to really shift the way they hold the ball, and they're really kind of moving their hand way off to the side, and they're putting just massive amounts of kind of stress on that inside part of the elbow with the way they're having to try to spin the ball now because they don't have some of those tacky substances that are there, which is really fascinating. And I think that's probably why we're seeing more of these injuries, and maybe perhaps that's why we're dealing with this with Giolito.
Well, when I look at Giolito, he had previous Tommy John surgery in 2012, and that was just 2 months after the Nationals picked him 16th in the draft. So let's talk about previous injury to the same part. He's already had Tommy John. How crazy is it for guys to have a second Tommy John?
Yeah, and again, another one of those things that's definitely on the rise. We're seeing more of those. And you look at kind of those early results of Tommy John, especially as we rewind back, let's say 20 years ago. It's been out longer than that. But let's say we go back to 20 years ago and things really started to take off in terms of the number of players getting Tommy John surgery. What we saw there was this, remarkable recovery where the big measure in any orthopedic, sports medicine procedure is this concept of, return to play at the same level or higher is always, that's the mark you're looking for, right? We saw this incredible study. In fact, there was a study, I think it was almost like 1,500 of these professional athletes that had Tommy John surgery, and their return to the same level or higher was like north of 90%, which is kind of unheard of in an orthopedic sports medicine process. And so pretty amazing. But as you looked at that and looked at the longevity or the careers of those players, what you saw change was they couldn't quite go as deep into the basically pitch count. They'd have to, cut their innings shorter. You'd be relying more upon middle relief for them as they weren't going, 7, 8, 9 innings anymore. So they kind of lost some of that endurance. So there definitely was a change there. They could get back to their top end, at least initially, but then they kind of lost some of the kind of inning duration, if you will. And so that does speak to some of that durability of that Tommy John ligament. And then obviously that opens the door for, re-injury, which definitely can occur in these athletes, which unfortunately we're seeing a lot more.
Dr. Brandon Seifert at Jock Doc Wednesday, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. If we go the route with Giolito of that flexor decision, what's the recovery time there? What's the turnaround?
Yeah, no. So if you're talking more on the surgical, like partial repair type deal, to put the internal brace in, much shorter timetable. You're probably back at anywhere between, I've seen as fast as 4 or 5 months, but could be up to a year. Versus if you're talking like Tommy John surgery itself, like full on reconstruction, especially in a revision scenario, you're probably looking at about a year and a half. So you potentially could cut that time in half, if not more. Again, a lot of those rehab protocols for that internal brace, partial repair are really evolving. And so it's hard to pinpoint a particular number. A lot of it is actually athlete dependent in terms of how quickly they progress and what their symptoms are like.
Dr. Brandon, thanks for the info today.
You got it, Chris. You guys take care.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, big thanks to Evan Bland, David Gustafson, Mike Babcock, and we'll be back at you tomorrow at 4. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, all platforms you can find the Hail Varsity Radio Show in podcast form. Can also check out the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like and subscribe there. Give us a rating on the pod platform. Follow Twitter at HVarsity Radio, at Schmidt_radio. At Herbal Essence is also where you can find Elijah on Twitter. Tomorrow, we'll check in with Brandon Vogel from Counter Reed. Tom Chattel from the Omaha World Herald with us, Coach Gary Barnett. And we'll also run down Danny Burke, hoping to run down Danny Burke and Burke's Best Bets. So that's what's happening. As always, email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com, and catch us on all the different platforms. AM 590, Omaha's ESPN. You can rewatch the show on that Twitter handle, KFOR Facebook and Twitter as well, and the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Got a ball game tonight, 7:45 at PBA. Locally on KFOR, we'll have coverage, myself and Tim Baird. Excited to have Southwest's girls coach calling the game with me tonight as they made a state tournament run per usual for Southwest and Coach Berda. He makes it look easy. So he'll be with me tonight. Elijah will be producing and engineering back in studio with all the great updates. What a fun day one of state tournament action. Fun being a word depending on if your team won or not. I don't know that Danny's gonna go that route.
Yeah, Tuck chimes in here on the stream and says he can't wait to see Burke's Best Bets on the state tournament.
There is stuff out there where I think you could bet on high school action.
I have seen some people do some faux lines out there on Twitter. Hey, if you and your friends want to get in on this, quote unquote, then here are some made-up lines. Right. All the lines in Class A pretty close here in the first round. It's kind of been evidenced by what we've seen in the first day. I believe Central, based on the lines I saw, was the first upset of the day.
Well, and we talked in segment 1 with Motzi in hour 1 with just predicting this Class A run. And while you've got Bell West as your favorite, the top seed, they got tested today. Their defense was elite. 1 point in the fourth quarter as they survived prep. Gretna is going to give Millard North everything they want tonight at 6 when that tips off here in about 5 minutes. Central over a higher seed in Omaha North, and congrats to Omaha North for a 20-win season and getting to state. But Central's just a different beast, man. They are phenomenal.
Battle-tested. Battle-tested is what I called them in the district final. They have gone through everybody that you would not want to go through in Class A. They have played them this year. They've given them all they can handle. That team's great. Would it be in poor taste, though, Schmidt, to do a steak and a beer bet on state tournament games?
Probably.
I think the one, considering you're calling one tonight, we have to stay away from Southeast and West side.
And some of these kids you'll see on the diamond is you're behind home plate.
Yeah.
That would be the tip of the iceberg of conflict of interest, don't you think?
Well, it's a different sport. What are they going to do?
You're still betting for or against them.
And I'm in a chest protector and mask. What are they going to do?
Well, and you have power to punch them out or toss them or... Son, that was just off the plate, ball 4. So check the podcast out. Tell a friend. Thanks for tuning in. And back with you tomorrow, 4 o'clock with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.